Bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong. This is Joe, the bearded historian. He'll tell you an interesting story. Be careful of his soldiers, they can be brats. This is Angel, she's an entity. She'll cause chaos and plant her hands at you. This is Sue, she likes spirits, not the alcohol. She's the reason this channel exists. This is David, he likes fire trucks. He's here occasionally. Bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong. We preserve his story. I didn't want to mute it because it kept going out. I was like, I just need it to go out for like 2 minutes. And I did it way back there, but I wasn't ready at that point. Yeah. So
I'll hit mute so you can fire it.
I appreciate that. Alright. Facing me. Alright guys, we're doing a traveling shout out today because I've got to get this up and prepared. Say hello to Billy the Historian.
Hello, Billy the Historian. Yeah.
Alright, ready? Here we go. Shout out time. Here's a shout out just for you. You support me, so I support you. This shout out is for our friends. So let's see who it is today. And before I forget, we're doing a video about highways, which we're currently not on one, are we?
We are on a highway, but our video is going to be about interstates. So this is a highway.
Highway.
Which is usually defined by only having 2 lanes, whereas a interstate will have 4 or more. Also has some other technical terms as far as the differences between. These are primarily asphalt paved and sometimes are fixable a lot faster than the interstate ones. But yeah, this is basically what was there before interstates came around. So these date back to the early 1900s. So.
Oh, I wish to go around. I'm tired. I'm sorry. Tired. Record. Start. There we go. Alright, we're going to try this again. We got Frugal, we got Jared, we got Abundance, we got Really Haunted, Aya, Wit, JB, Cable, Misty, Jacob, Kelly King, Knit, Wit, Makeup, Baked, Talks, Contact, there's Net, Miss T, Carnival, Goat, Right Touch, Hellbellies, Kefla, I have no idea. There's Ducha, there's M&J, there's Richard, TNT, Makeup, Leo, Jacob, Jericho, Frugal's kind of in the lead. Tristan just took the lead. Ooh, Tristan might get it. Might be Tristan. Let's see who we got coming up from the back. There's Rip. There's George. There's Crazy. Oh, Carnival got it this time. Hang on a minute. Alright. We love to cruise on Carnival Cruise Line and want to share our adventures. They have a TikTok, which I'm apparently going to have to look up. Look, there's a connecty one right there. And Instagram, which I'm going to have to connect to, which I didn't know existed. But this is good for people who are interested in cruising. Someday, hopefully, not in the next bazillion years, but in like maybe the next 5, we'll be able to do a cruise. I've talked to Joe into doing a small one that doesn't go too far out into the ocean.
No. Otherwise, I'll be sitting in a life raft the whole time.
So check those out. Like, share, and comment, and have a good day. Alright, Mr. the Historian, tell us something interesting.
Well, we're gonna have some fun because coming up, I've been working on a kind of a biography of roadways, and one of the biggest pieces of this feature is going to deal with our interstates. And on this date, in June 29th, 1956, President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed a bill into law called the Federal Aid Highway Act, also known as the National Interstate and Defense Highway Act. Originally authorized for $25 billion. In today's money, that would be about $215 billion. Would call for the construction of 41,000 miles of interstate highway over a 10-year period. Now, at that time, it was the largest public works project in American history. Now, a lot of the people look at, Eisenhower getting behind this due to an experience he had back in 1919 when he was with the U.S. Army and his first effort to go from D.C. across the country to California using the historic Lincoln Highway. Well, the problem with this particular journey that they had started out on the 7th of July, 1919, middle of the summer, followed up to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and from there followed the Lincoln Highway to San Francisco. Well, they'd have bridges cracked, vehicles would get stuck in the mud, equipment broke. The convoy was greeted warmly by communities across the country. They would reach San Francisco on September the 6th, 1919. Well, it was memorable enough for Dwight D. Eisenhower, at that time only a lieutenant colonel, 28 years old, to include a chapter about the trip titled Through Darkest America with Truck and Tank in his book At Ease, Stories I Tell to Friends. While the trip had been difficult, tiring, and fun, the experience on the Lincoln Highway, plus his observations of the German Autobahn network during World War II, might have convinced him to support construction of the interstate system when he became president. Now, the old convoy had started thinking about good two-lane highways, but Germany had made him see the wisdom of broader ribbons across the land. And his grand plan for highways, announced in 1954, led to 1956 legislation breakthrough that created the Highway Trust Fund to accelerate construction of the interstate system. Now, though Eisenhower is sometimes described as having advocated the highways for the purpose of national defense, scholarship has shown that he said relatively little about national defense when he actually advocated the plan, instead emphasizing highway fatalities and the importance of transportation for the national economy. Now, in the event of a ground invasion by a foreign power, the U.S. Army would need good highways to be able to transport troops and material across the country efficiently. Now, following completion of the highways, the cross-country journey that took the convoy 2 months in 1919 was cut down to only 5 days. Quite a step forward. Well, with the passage of the 1956 Federal Aid Act, it has been exaggerated. Eisenhower's preferred bill, authored by a group of non-governmental officials led by General Lucius Clay, was voted down overwhelmingly by Congress in 1955. The bill Eisenhower actually signed was the brainchild of congressional Democrats, in particular Albert Gore Sr., George Fallon, Dennis Chavez, and Hale Boggs. The bill authorized paying for highway expansion by establishing the Highway Trust Fund, which in turn would be funded by increases in highway user tax on gasoline, diesel, tires, and other materials. For his part, during the 1954-55, Eisenhower had adamantly refused to support a highway bill that either raised user taxes or increased deficit spending, instead favoring a plan that would create a government corporation that would issue highway bonds. However, congressional Democrats and members of his own administration, including Comptroller General Joseph Campbell, publicly criticized Eisenhower's proposed government corporation on the grounds that its bonds would, in fact, count towards the national debt. Now, many limited access toll highways had been built prior to the Interstate Highway Act that were incorporated into the interstate system. For example, the Ohio Turnpike carries portions of Interstate 76, I-80, and I-90. For major turnpikes in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Kansas, Oklahoma, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Maine, and West Virginia, tolls continue to be collected even though the turnpikes have long since been paid for. The money collected is used for highway maintenance, turnpike improvement projects, and state's general funds. Now, this isn't the case in Massachusetts, where the state constitution requires the money be used for transportation. In addition, there are several major toll bridges and toll tunnels included in the interstate system, including 4 bridges in the San Francisco Bay Area, one's linking Delaware with New Jersey with New York, New Jersey with Pennsylvania, the upper and lower peninsulas of Michigan, and the Indiana and Kentucky in the Louisville area. Now, tolls collected on interstate highways remain on segments of I-95, 94, 90, 88, 87, 80, 77, 76, 70, 64, 44, 35, 294, 355, hike. Just kidding. And several others. Now, in addition, some of the states have built tolled express lanes in existing freeways. Toll turnpikes in the following states have been declared paid off, and those highways have become standard freeways with the removal of tolls. The Connecticut I-95, Kentucky I-65, Maryland, part of the I-95, Texas, part of I-30, Virginia, the part of I-95 between Richmond and Petersburg, and additionally, Kentucky has several former toll roads that, in full part, became part of the interstate highway system after the removal of tolls. Parts of I-69, I-165, and I-69, with the I-69 spur and the I-369 following in the near future. Now, the big thing to look at as far as the highway systems go, and the pretty much straight out configuration that they had for these, is that they would go in even numbers, east to west, across several corridors in the United States. The big thing I can remember is up here we have I-90. And I-90 was kind of a unique juncture because for most of the part it went straight east to west. However, they ran into two problems. The first one being is that as you approached Rapid City, the Black Hills are right there. And there were people that were dead set on it not going right through. And there were some that were also very big into doing that. But, you know, I can't imagine them putting that 4 lanes of concrete straight through the Black Hills. It would tear out a lot of mountains. You would have a lot of real angry ranchers. And, of course, it's also Native American land. So, yeah, I would see that not going through. There were some that wanted it to go up and through Lead and Deadwood, which, in a way, I could have seen that happening, but I just don't think it would have been very productive or feasible. And so they swung it at that point in a northwestern format, and it would go up past Sturgis on up to Spearfish, and then it would swing into Wyoming. And then from there, it would go over through Wyoming, up into Montana, and then from Montana through Idaho, and eventually it winds up in Seattle. Now, a couple of the problems that they have had with the interstate system, when they were originally building these systems, they would hold meetings to see exactly what would be the best ideal locations. Obviously, big cities wanted to get their hands on the multitude of people that are going to be using these highways. To them, a lot of them considered it would be like replacing the locomotives and railroads with human railroads. All this concrete. Some towns really wanted it. Other towns wanted nothing to do with it. Up here again in South Dakota, we already had what was known as the 1416. It was the old silver and black highway system that went from Chicago all the way over to the Black Hills and Yellowstone National Park. Well, for the most part, that's the exact same route that I-90 took. And when they decided to build I-90, they basically put it right where that highway is, and where the highway wasn't, that got turned into kind of service roads. So they're still there, you know, the asphalt roads. And surprisingly enough, some of the asphalt's still holding up remarkably well because there's a lot less traffic on it now. You know, the cost of having to go out there and patch an asphalt pothole is nothing compared to, you know, doing something like that with the concrete. Now, don't get me wrong. In South Dakota, we have 2 seasons. You have winter, and you have road construction. I hear this about pretty much every state in the union, so don't worry about it. you'll see road cones, you'll see flagmen, you'll see orange vests, and then they're doing one of three things. Either A, they're fixing bridges, which, don't get me wrong, it's a smart thing. Some of our bridges are 30 to 40 years old. Their overpasses are, they just recently had a talk with the South Dakota Department of Transportation about how they want to get rid of some of the overpasses. Kind of silly. They have to take and go along on certain sections, and they have to stick in these expanders. Because with concrete, cold weather, hot weather, cold weather, the concrete does this neat expansion contraction thing. And if they don't get in there and pack these seals with this material, it starts busting up your concrete. And I've seen some of the damage from it. It's not pretty. Because somebody made the mistake of cutting the budget, forgetting to send their crews out there to pack the concrete. Heaven forbid. And then the third thing that they usually have the crews will go out and do, and they have to put in their stripes. Yellow lines, white lines, make sure all the little flags and everything, all the reflectors are good. And it's a time-consuming process, but granted, the interstate's been working great since the 70s. The big problem that they also had is that, like we were mentioning, this initial plan that they had was going to be for a 10-year plan. That was back in 1956. Up here, we didn't get the I-90 through until, if I remember right, I think it was either 1970 or 1969. And to get it to go where they were going, they had to blow a hole through the first ridge of the Black Hills over by Blackhawk. And I remember them going through with, road graders and stuff trying to blade that down. One of the places I used to work overlooked where it was going through, and they said at night you could go up there and watch them trying to blade down this hill. I bet that was one heck of a sight. But from what I understand also is that they were working on interstate roads up until the 90s. So much for the government plan of having it last only 10 years. But the other thing to take a look at as far as how this Federal Highway Act was going to work in 1956, from the early 90s, from 1900s, a lot of the nation, thanks to automobiles, was making a radical change. In the earlier part, everybody was all big on trains, locomotives. You still had shipping that was affecting both coasts, east and west. And a lot of people looked at that as the expansion of the country. Once automobiles started becoming more popular, a lot of it came out of Ford. When they started building out so many Model Ts that every family could own one. I mean, they were punching them out of the assembly lines at a phenomenal rate. Granted, they were not, a big car. I mean, you think about what the original Model T had. You were lucky if you had the windshield. There was no AC. If you wanted an AC, you had to go fast. But the big problem that they also had back then was that, a car could only go as well as its roads. Now, by the 50s, here we go into modern times. You've got cars that could go up to, 75, 80 miles an hour. The Autobahns over in Germany were a lot faster than that. There were some people that were joking that you could actually, they actually one time had a F4 Phantom have to do an emergency landing on the Autobahn in Germany. And some guy actually passed the plane on the outside. Gives you an idea how fast somebody was actually going on the Autobahn. But, here in the United States, there's a lot of places in the world where, the metro is still a major source of transportation. England is, they have people taking the trains all over the place. Over in mainland Europe, Spain, France, Germany, a lot of those places still use railroads and, the subway systems. Here in the United States, it's like everybody lives and breathes for automobiles, and it's understandable. The big thing that automobiles could do that a railroad couldn't is that your railroad had two directions, forward and backwards. If you had to go 50 miles from the railroad and there's no roads and you don't know anybody who's there to meet you with a wagon, guess what? You're walking. So, the nice thing about this Highway Act is that they built these great big corridors of concrete that went from, sea to shining sea. They took several different courses across this great nation, and in its own way, it helped, found the next great growth that we had as far as a nation goes. So, but this has been the Bearded Historian. Keep a lookout for our roads piece that'll be coming up, and you folks have a good evening. Good night.